What's up guys? Today I'm going to show you how to do a DIY European mount. I'm going to take you step by step through the process and show you all the supplies that you need in order to complete this yourself. The end result is going to be a really nice white skull, as you can see right here, and in the long run it's going to save you a lot of money. So let's get started.
All right, step one is to grab your favorite knife and remove all the skin from the head. That includes the ears. We're going to get to the neck meat and the tongue, and we're going to remove the lower jawbone as well. I always like to start at the neck and work my way forward. It just seems to be the easiest way to do it. You'll have to take some time around the antlers and make sure that you get all the way up against the bone there, because if you leave hair and meat up in there, it's going to be hard to get off later. So be as thorough as you can here. Once you've got all the skin removed, you're ready to move on to the neck meat, and from there you can go straight down to the tongue. It's a pretty easy transition. That neck meat and the tongue should all come out together. After that, you're going to remove the lower jawbone. Some folks like to keep this. It's up to you. Whenever I hang it on the wall, I don't ever keep it, so I just pull it straight off. There's some meat on the left and right side there that you have to cut away, and then eventually that lower jawbone is going to pop right off. All right, step number two, and probably my favorite step in the process, is to grab your power washer and start spraying the skull. You're going to remove every piece of flesh that is on here to include the brain. There shouldn't be any hair, any fat, any meat. It should be nothing but bone when you get done here. What I'm using here is a 3000 PSI power washer. Now you may not necessarily need that much PSI. You might be able to get away with 2500 or even 2000, but the more PSI you have, the easier this is going to be. I've seen people use the electric 1500 PSI power washers on this, and it just seems like they had a little bit of trouble clearing the nasal passage and the brain as well. If that's all you have, that's okay, because you can always come back and do this again after the next step in the process. At this point, I'm ready to move on to the nasal passage. Some folks like to keep this nice on the inside. It doesn't really matter to me, because when it's up on a wall, I can't see inside the nose anyways. So I just put the power washer down in there and I clear all that out. Now that the nasal passage and the bulk of the meat is off of this skull, I'm ready to move on to the brain. You're going to want some type of waterproof pants for this, because it's really going to spray out of there. At this point, I'm just going back with the power washer and hitting everything one more time, making sure there's no pieces of fat, no pieces of meat or anything like that. If you leave any of that on there, it's going to rot and it can cause dark spots in the skull. In our finished product, we want it to be as white as possible, so there can be no meat and no fat in this. Now the power washer is all finished. This is what your skull should look like. It should be clean. There should be no fat or meat left on this skull. Step number 3 is to soak the skull in soapy water. I like to use the Clear Dawn. If you use the blue, sometimes it can stain the skull and make it really hard to get out. I'm using maybe 1/8 of a cup of soap here, and then I'm just going to fill it up with water. It's important to note that I change this water every 24 hours. So I'm going to change it every 24 hours for 3 days. The reason that we do this is to degrease the skull, to pull any fats from little crevices that were in there that we didn't get with the power washer. Okay, so after 3 days, you can go longer if you want. I mean, you could do 5 days if you wanted to. 3 days seems to be enough for me though. After that, you're going to pull the skull out, and then you're going to go hang it up to dry. So I'm going to let this skull hang in direct sunlight for 24 hours. If it rains while it's out there, I'm probably going to have to let it go another day. Once the skull is dry, you can bring it inside, put it in a container, and you're ready to move on to step number 5, which is to soak it in peroxide. I'm going to do this for 3 days as well. Now you got to watch it. If you left any fat or anything in here, you may open it up on day 1 and there could be maggots or something in there. So make sure you're checking this daily. But if you got all the fat off and you didn't leave anything inside the brain, it's not going to be a problem to leave it for 3 days. Here I'm putting paper towels on the spots of the skull where the peroxide isn't touching. You can only go up so high, because if the peroxide touches the antlers, it'll stain those as well. So go up as high as you can without touching the antlers, and then put paper towels over the rest. After 3 days, you're ready to pull the skull out. Now, after you pull it out, you have to let it completely dry, just like you did out on the fence. You can put it back out on the fence if you want again. Most of the time, I just set it out on the counter for 5 or 6 hours at room temperature, and that seems to work. Once it is completely dry, you're ready to move on to step 6. Step number 6 is the final step. You're going to take Mop and Glow. You can buy this at Walmart or probably at Dollar General. Spray it all over the skull, completely drenching it. I like to use a rag as well for hard to reach places. Make sure you do the inside of the brain cavity, the nasal passage, everywhere. There shouldn't be one piece of this skull that isn't covered with Mop and Glow. And what this is going to do is seal it to keep out dust and dirt and other things that could make your skull turn away from being the bright white that you want it to be. Once that Mop and Glow is completely dry, this is what your skull should look like. It should be a really nice bright white color here, and it's ready to go up on your wall. Just make sure that the Mop and Glow is completely dry before you put it up there. As always, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video or you learned something today, like and subscribe to our channels, and we'll see y'all next time.